Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to New Signature's EMS, What You Need to Know About Enterprise Mobility Security webinar. Um, there are a few housekeeping items to go over before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to all attendees. Hello, I'm checking. Can everybody hear me?
Now I can.
Okay,
I
sorry.
heard the beginning of your, that it was being recorded and then there was
Okay,
nothing. So
okay, got
now
it.
it's back.
All right, thank you. Okay, so this webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to all attendees within 2 to 3 business days. Q&A will be addressed at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to place any questions in the chat window during the session. So introducing our presenter for the session, Dave Chalmers, which is one of New Signature's solution architects. Dave, I will turn things over to you to get started.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon. We'll go through the housekeeping. We covered that. Yeah, just introduce myself. I've been with New Signature for about a year now. Prior to joining New Signature, I was actually at Microsoft for the past 15 years. I worked in the Technology Center in Boston for 5, and then I was in their consulting group for the prior 10. My primary focus is on unified communications. That's Skype and Exchange. Then everything that orbits it, so that obviously includes things like identity and mobility services and the like. And so have my contact information there if you want to reach me either on email, on Twitter. Tend to just post work-related things around identity and enterprise mobility services. That's kind of one of my things. And so we'll move on. So, just kind of some background information, right? Talking about, today's environment of, where we are, some of the data points that you may have seen, right? That, right now that 63% of data breaches involve weak default or stolen passwords. I think, the news that came out this morning about Yahoo, again, with another dump of, I think, 1 billion accounts and passwords, right? That obviously represents a huge risk to obviously people in their personal lives, but then potentially in their work identities, because as we know, lots of people tend to use the same password everywhere, right? So they might be using the password they use for their fantasy football in Yahoo might be the same one that they're using at work. So what happens, right, is that these attackers go for Yahoo not to mess with people's football lineups, but really because they know that account and password is probably used for their credit cards and for work, and that's the real target. Also, also leads into things like shadow IT, so that there's lots of people, more than 80%, according to some surveys, of people using non-approved SaaS-based software. So that might be they're using their personal Dropbox accounts to store, corporate information, what have you, and they might be using software to remote control or remote into their work computers. You get the idea, and IT doesn't know about it at all. And then partner that all with slow to non-existent IT budget growth, right? That IT budget growth, as we all know, has been pretty much essentially flat for the last few years, and so that's what's leading to that. I see a note from Lauren. Are you getting an echo or?
Well, it's like I'm hearing you speak and then I'm hearing the recording. I mean, I can disconnect and try again, but it all of a sudden just started.
Okay. Anybody else?
It stopped now when I.
Oh,
now
all right.
I hear music.
Are you dialed in? Oh no, you're only in one.
No, I'm on Skype, so let me dial in. Okay, I'll disconnect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any
Okay.
music on my end.
All right. That's odd. Okay. We'll moving on. We'll be on the next slide for a bit, so Lauren will catch up. And so, what's Microsoft's approach to that, right? And so they have a suite of services that they call Enterprise Mobility and Security. Used to just be called Enterprise Mobility Suite, but then they changed the S to kind of put that more focus on that this is really a suite of services that is really focused on security, and so it's targeted at the at the two levels that you see on the slide, right? That we want to secure against threats, any new threats that might be coming out, things that I don't even know exist yet. But I want it tied to the user's identity. Right? I don't want to have people have new ways to do things or really impact their productivity, right? So I want them to have freedom to use whatever device that they want from wherever they want to maintain their productivity, not make any compromises. And then finally, reflecting that flatlined IT growth spend, right? Do more with less, right? Get access to some of these services without either paying more money, maybe it's already included in my existing subscriptions, or maybe it's only a slight uplift, adding some cost for a lot more value. Okay, and so the way that we're going to kind of cover the rest of the topics today is it's really into these three buckets, and we're going to focus really primarily on the first one. So all the services and capabilities that are around identity-driven security. Part of EMS is for managed mobile productivity. That's really what they call their Intune suite. We're not going to get into that today. And then, like as I said before, that EMS is really a comprehensive solution, and that we'll give you some links to all of the various components of EMS a little later in the presentation, because there really is a lot that you get, for the cost. Okay, so again, so focusing on identity-driven security, and what that really means is, Microsoft's new mantra is, mobile first and cloud first, right? And so what that really means is, again, people want to be able to access their data, access their services from any device, from anywhere, and by having identity-driven security, what it means is that I have one set of credentials for each of my users, right? And so that it makes it easier for them to join and do things. I can apply things like conditional access policies or multi-factor authentication. I can get really rich reporting and auditing. And so if I only have a single set of credentials, and all of my access and services are flowing through those sets of credentials, then what I get the benefit of is some really rich machine learning, whereby the system itself learns what's normal for a given user, and also can know what's not normal. All right. Okay, so again, as I opened up before, right, 63% are those stolen passwords, breached accounts, and what does that lead to, right? Again, so right, that billion user account breach from Yahoo today, right? What is that going to lead to? It's going to, like I said, it's going to lead to that a lot of those accounts are using the passwords that people have for the same ones at work, and then what happens after that? An attacker gets into the network. This isn't, like the bad old days, or even the good old days of where people would go in and immediately start to attack or do malicious things into your network. Today's attacker is a lot more sophisticated. They're in it for the long haul. They don't want to rock the boat, so to speak. And so that what it leads is to the average amount of time that an attacker is resident in a network before they're detected is over 200 days. And so that what really leads to is something like the Target breach from a few years back, right? Is that an attacker comes in and they make what's called a lateral move, right? So they'll go from the basic account that they breached, and then they'll be able to, through various attacks, elevate their privileges, move laterally, and then get into other parts of the network and start gathering information. Not doing anything malicious, so to speak, but just gathering information and then doing whatever they want to do with it. And so some of these services that we'll talk about today are going to help you identify these breaches, and it really takes that stance of assume breach, right? No more of thinking, oh, I can just keep building up bigger walls and keep people out. That's not the reality anymore. We just go with assume breach and say, I assume that people are already inside the network, and so how do I find them? How do I get reports on them? How do I stop them in their tracks? So, so all of that, talking about all of that, is what does that mean as far as products or architecture? How does it all fit in to the environment? And so, what I've got here is a picture of a typical network, right? So where you have an on-premises traditional, I've got Active Directory, I have other directories, LDAP directories, things tied to my HR systems, whatever. And now I have this new thing called Azure Active Directory that maybe some of you are using, right? Or a lot of the times people don't even realize that they have this, right? They just say, oh, I'm a subscriber to Office 365, and they don't realize that there is a variant of Active Directory that's tied to that service. And so that's what we're talking about. But at the same time, there's larger and larger consumption of cloud-based software, like I said. So it could be Office 365, it could be things like Salesforce, Workday, whatever. I mean, there's just literally thousands upon thousands of mainstream software as a service-based services out there today. And what happens typically is people go out and subscribe to it. It could be the one-off, like I described earlier, where it's one user who is purchasing something like Box or Dropbox to store data. To it could be departmental solutions, where maybe just the finance department says, hey, we learned about this at some conference, and then they go ahead and just slap down the corporate credit card and start to buy something for their individual group. And what then it comes is that, again, each of these services might have their own unique authentication systems. And again, what's going to happen is people are going to tend to use the same username and password that they use for work because they want to make their lives easier. And you're relying on the provider's abilities to maintain a secure operating environment. And as we know, that's probably not a good assumption or a good thing to figure out. And so what Microsoft does as that foundation, right, when we say identity is a foundation, is to say hey, I acknowledge, right, Microsoft is acknowledging this isn't the 80s, or even the 90s, where people go to Microsoft as a one-stop shop and buy everything from them. It's not even that way if you use competitive solutions. If you're using Google, you're not going to use everything from Google. People are going to take best-of-breed bits of software. And so what Microsoft's saying is, I know that that's the reality, so I'm going to at least as a baseline, as a foundation, make your use of all these other services more secure. And the way they do that is tie Azure AD into all of these other SaaS-based applications. And so what does that mean? Is that, well, rather than going to Salesforce or Workday and saying, I want to use this service for my employees, so I start to provision accounts in the Workday system or the expense management software, right? I go in there and I create accounts and passwords and then ask my employees, hey, can you make sure you change your password in ADP, every 90 days or twice a year or something like that. That's really asking for trouble. And so what Azure AD does is says, instead of provisioning accounts in those SaaS-based services, use Azure AD. And as you see from the arrows, right, Azure AD is tied to your corporate directory. And so what that means is that when people log on with their corporate credentials using the password that hopefully you've created policies that are saying, hey, I'm going to force you to change your password every 7 weeks, and it's got to be 10 characters and mixed case and a strong password. I'm going to use those credentials, and then through single sign-on, when I click on my browser and go to ADP to look at my paycheck, I don't get prompted for authentication because I'm already authenticated by Azure AD, which is really getting its authentication from my on-premises AD. So really that's the foundational part of it, that we do that part first, and right away, you're halfway there. Just by virtue of saying, I'm not going to use the identity and authentication system of the SaaS provider itself, and I'm going to use my existing AD, I might have eliminated half of risk right away without doing anything else. So we're going to talk about more than that in the remaining time, but just to put that out there, that is really the foundation. And so once you have that done, then everything else opens up to you, all of these other more advanced services. And so I should also note is that the Azure AD, what I've described so far, that is included in your Office 365 subscription, right? So what, as part of the base subscription that most people get, you get the right to use up to 10 SaaS applications per end user, right? So that might mean is you might have 50 SaaS-based applications, but they're a variety of different ones. You just can't exceed more than 10 applications per individual user. So that's included in the base subscription that's part of Office 365. You obviously can step it up to what's called Azure AD Premium that gives you an unlimited number. But for most people, the base one is good enough. So let me click through here, right? So example, I always do that, talk over my decks. So like I just said, right, is that by setting up that foundational aspect, right, you gain access to thousands of applications through that one core identity, that one that everybody is used to, that they've been using for their entire career, right, of hitting Control-Alt-Delete, they know how to log in, they know what their password is. And as part of Azure AD, you get access to, I think the latest count is about 2,700 different applications. And it's not even just limited to those 2,700 mainstream applications, but it also can be your own on-premises applications that you want to publish externally. And so they give you that ability through their cloud-based software to say, let me proxy the connection into some legacy application that I have on premises, but I still want to get authenticated in a simple way. I don't want to have to force people into a VPN with maybe yet another username and password. That second part of, again, they say business without borders. So again, meaning I should be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and from any device that I want. But at the same time, I want to maintain security, right? I want to make sure that, I might go on vacation but yet need to do some work while I'm away. Have the system be smart enough to validate me that, hey, I'm in the Caribbean whereas yesterday I was in Boston doing my work. It is a possibility that I could be in the Caribbean today, but maybe make certain, since that's not something that you're typically doing, most people, that I get authenticated and maybe double check that I really am who I say I am, and it's not somebody who's using my credentials. And then again, at scale, that ability to manage the identities at a really huge scale. And so this is something that only a few providers in the industry can do, right? Is that Microsoft, through virtue of all of its consumer services, right, where there's hundreds and hundreds of millions of people using their free email services, using things like Xbox, using Bing, to obviously the corporate accounts, right, of all of the tens of millions of users and subscribers, Office 365. they're funneling through, I think like 1 billion authentications a day. They have that scale and reach to quickly see, if something exists on the internet, something bad or some bad trend is happening, it's likely going to affect one of their users. So they'll have these tripwires, and they can see something a lot more quickly than maybe some of the smaller players might, and then therefore they can be nimble and react. And so they call that the intelligent security graph. If you ever see anything, that's how they refer to it. And it's really this machine learning Skynet type of thing that says, I know everything that's going on, and therefore I can figure out what's good and what's bad. So, again, transitioning more now into some of the discussions around some of the services themselves, right? Kind of divided again up into identity, devices, the applications, and so really as people start, again, that's another new thing around identity is the traditional concept of who has access to my network. In my services has blurred. It used to just be you're either an employee or you're not. But now today's world is really more of people are coming and going. The gig-based economy where I have more people coming in just to do a service for me. So they could be a traditional employee. They could be a partner organization. They could even be customers, having access to some of the services I have. And so I need to manage all of these identities in a nice, secure, and fluid way. The idea of mobility, again, more and more people their primary computing devices are becoming their smartphones. So they need to, again, be able to access the services wherever they want and however they want. And so all of that means is that new attack landscape that we've talked about of people's credentials are all over the place, and that means is your current defenses are not sufficient. So again, meaning the traditional way of saying I have a firewall and I have a proxy server for web-based web browsing, and maybe if I'm really advanced, I have intrusion detection software running. That's not good enough when maybe half of my work life is happening outside of the network all the time through SaaS software. And so yeah, the animation shows is I get a breach of one of my identities, and then suddenly, I've got a breach everywhere. It really can start to flow out. And so again, I really can't hammer it back down enough. Of identity is really the core anchor of what Microsoft is bringing to the table here. So again, accessing it everywhere, having one identity rather than multiples is a huge advance, and that security graph that I've discussed. So what is the approach, right? How are they going to help you with all of these things now that I've scared you? They divided into 3 different ways, right? One is protect at the front door, right? The obvious thing, right, of saying, my users aren't intending to be malicious, right? They're just trying to make their lives easy. They're trying to get their works done, and so we'll go into that in a little bit. Protect them against mistakes. Again, most people aren't out to really make a huge mistake at work. Most people don't want to do career-ending or career-limiting moves. So let me protect them against themselves in the various ways that they're going to do their work, and then finally, detect those attacks before any real damage can occur. All right, so what does protect at the front door mean? And so what that means is I've got the products and the services listed at the bottom. It means is that before somebody can even get access to the service or any of the services the cloud-based services that you're using, is that I'm going to maybe at the first step I might hit them with what's called multi-factor authentication, right? So in other words, saying the username and the password isn't good enough, right? Maybe, unfortunately, you're not able to enforce a very strong password on your end users, or you're not able to get them to change the password very often. But what you can do is say, all right, maybe I'll compromise on the password and say you only have to change it 4 times a year, and I don't go crazy with the complexity. But what I am going to do is enforce what's called multi-factor authentication. And what that means is people are getting more familiar with this with their banks and their credit cards, where it says, all right, if you're going to log in, then I'm going to send you a text message, or I'm going to do an application push to something on your phone, because I would say 99.99% of the people have their phone on them at all times, right? It's the one piece of gear that you can be confident that they will have, and therefore, if somebody has the phone, there's a high likelihood that it is them. So when they go to access the service, I might hit them with this MFA prompt and say, enter a text or reply to a text or something like that to prove to me that you are who you say you are. And then secondly, I might protect the front door by doing what's called conditional access. And what that means is I will look at those four states. I can look at where are they, right? Since the world is very connected, the world can tell, where you are based on your IP address. The whole world is mapped by IP. So if you get a certain IP, the service knows where that is, right? So again, that helps stop against the impossible travel scenario. So again, if you log in from Boston at 8:30 in the morning, and then suddenly someone logs in as you from Moscow 5 minutes later, that's obviously impossible. So probably means something bad is going on. The second condition could be device state. So that means looking at the health of the device. If it's a mobile device, has it been jailbroken? In the case of an iPhone, has been rooted in the case of an Android device, meaning, has somebody put custom software on it, or is it running some kind of rootkit or underlying software on the device? Again, so these are all things that if you pay attention to the news, right, is that that's how they found some recent attacks in the Middle East, right, of governments or foreign governments or someone had loaded software through people just clicking on a link in a text message, and that rooted the phone, and now suddenly that device has been compromised. So the service can look at things like that to say, what is the state of this device, and do I decide to let them in or not, right? Who are they? What application are they getting into? So you might decide, hey, it's okay for my end user to look at their email remotely, but maybe not to look at HR data, right? So if you want to look at HR data, I'm sorry, but you've got to be in the office. I'm not going to take that risk. So it really can differentiate between the user and the application and separate the two. And then finally, things like risk. Just what that means is what kind of behavior is going on. So that behavioral analysis. So one of the demos I'll show you is somebody coming to the network via the Tor network, right, through an anonymous IP service, right? That in itself doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? It could mean that your end user has traveled to a country where internet traffic is highly regulated, and they don't trust the country where they are. But for most people, if they're coming in via that type of service, it probably means I should at least double check, right? That they're not just a bad operator, doing something. And so how do I do all of those things, right? And so the two primary services that we're going to talk about today are what's called Azure AD Identity Protection and Azure AD Privilege Identity Management. So identity protection protects the generic end user. Privileged identity management is what it says is, you have your higher access users, so your typical IT administrators, your people with access to sensitive information in HR, and how do I protect those people? And so again, you see from the deck, and you'll get this deck afterwards, of what are the actions. So again, allow them in, force them to do MFA, block access, force them to change their password. You'll see in the demonstration all of the various things that you're able to do. And so, and then how do I protect them against user mistakes, right? And what that really comes into is that a service that's called Cloud App Security. And so it's a totally, a cloud-based service, no agent, And what that means is that I don't have to install anything on devices or computers to figure out what types of shadow IT activities are going on in my network. Right? Our people did finance subscribe to the Box service, and they started putting some of the sensitive corporate financial records into Box. Right? Nothing wrong with Box, but I think you probably want to know if people are putting things there. Versus, maybe they're not using a reputable company like Box, but they're using Jim Bob's free storage service, and again they're putting confidential HR records on it. So that risk scoring idea of Microsoft, again, since it has access to so much of the internet, would say is Box is reputable, it's a publicly traded company, or very well known. They know what they're doing, so we can trust them. Versus Jim's storage company, that's some guy operating a bunch of storage, and then who knows where, right? So maybe we're going to treat that as a little more risky, and then give you policies, right? So it's scoring things, policies, so that you can control. How do I prevent leakage to my mobile applications? So again, Intune, we've got recordings from when we've talked about Intune in the past. We probably have some coming up in the future. We'll dive a little bit deeper on that, but at a high level, Intune will give you that data loss prevention on your mobile applications. It will provide what's called mobile application management. So preventing a user from accidentally, copying a Word document into their personal OneDrive or personal Box account. It'll say it's smart enough to know is the work Box account or the work OneDrive for Business, the OneDrive for Business account is for work. You also have Word attached to your personal storage, your G drive. I'm not going to allow you to save the corporate document into your Google Drive. You can only save it into the approved corporate storage environment. I can also manage the device to make sure, again, that it has been rooted, it hasn't been jailbroken. Again, and I can protect individual line of business applications. So that's all part of another part of EMS. And then finally, the last part of the suite is called Azure Information Protection. So a lot of you might know that used to be called Rights Management Services. So it used to be just encryption, protection of the underlying documents. And what Microsoft done is kind of rebranded it and enhanced and extended the suite to do more. So it does things like classify and label your documents automatically, meaning that if it sees certain keywords things that are in the document like social security numbers or customer IDs or something similar type of stuff in the document, it would automatically classify it and protect it and then do what you want it to do. So that might mean is limit the document's access to employees only, people in finance only. It might encrypt it so that if the document accidentally leaks out, no one can gain access to it. Or it might still encrypt it and allow you to share it just with certain targeted partners. And all of that it also does is monitor and respond, and so can decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to revoke access to the document or not? And then the last two parts that we'll go into is called Advanced Threat Analytics. And so really that's the brains behind the organization for your on-premises activities to say what's normal, what's not. So detect people trying to do those lateral moves inside your network and protect you against all of that. So let's dive into the demo. Let me switch over. Okay, everybody should be able to see it. So I've got two windows open on my desktop here. This is in my browser. I've got the administration console, and then also over here I've got a remote desktop session for one of my users, right? So first I'm going to show you the normal experience, right? I'm going to launch the Edge browser, and then I'm going to get prompted for authentication, right? No craziness here. If I type the password right. Okay, and then I'm going to get authenticated, and I get logged in, and then I should there you go, and I see good evening, Isaiah, right? So I've got it set to UK time, so it thinks it's evening, right? So I've got in, no problem. For most people, right, I could have had this set up for single sign-on, so I wouldn't have even been prompted. It would just let me write in and go ahead. And then I want to follow that up with, so nothing else to see there, nothing too crazy. But now I'm going to launch the Tor browser, right? So it's going to route my traffic through an anonymous connection, right? So meaning it's not going to think that I'm in Boston anymore. Let's see, where it says I've got my home page to say what is my IP. And so right now, so it knows, hey, you're using the Tor data services, and so you're coming out of this 176 IP range, which is not where I am right now. So if I go now to the back to the same service, I go to my Office 365 web page. It's going to connect and hopefully get me onto that service as we wait and watch the spinning circle. But that's what happens when you're going through the Tor network, is it's routing you through lots and lots of different hops. Okay, so now I'm on the Microsoft site, and I log on. Okay, and then what would happen is then it would come back, and we'll see. It routes its way around there. Oh, okay. And I must have hit remember my last session. So normally what would happen there, unfortunately, the live software, is that if I hadn't just done it 20 minutes ago, that it would say, hey, you're coming from an unknown place. I'm going to ask you for a multi-factor prompt, right? But what I can do over here is actually I can see the evidence of that through here on identity protection, that I see risk events, right? And so I can see here that right away on the home page that it says, hey, there's some medium risk level events that have happened. It notices that means, hey, you've had 10 events of somebody coming from an anonymous IP. I can click through those events to see more details about it. Who was it, right? So you'll see here, obviously, I've been doing this demo for a while, so I'm always using Isaiah. I can see where it says 2 instances. What happened, what was his IP address, and again, you can see that I can click through each of these events. How long was Isaiah logged on? Who is he? What's his role? So you see that Isaiah is a global admin, right? So he's got high power. I probably would really want to pay attention to his service or what he is doing, and so I can get all of this rich reporting about each of these things. The same thing goes for here about unfamiliar locations again. So you can see all the different places. So right here is home, right? So it says this is what's normal, is for you to log on from Massachusetts. But then suddenly I've got all these other instances right around the same time that says, hey, you were in Texas, then you were in Iceland, then you're in California and Michigan and Romania and then France, all within a short period of time. It's probably unlikely. But you'll notice is that, for me, I've set these things to be a medium risk. So I could change things. I can look at who's flagged for risky events. I can look at vulnerabilities, and then again, so you see it at 16 times Isaiah is doing something. But really, what that really means is that you can say I can knock down the false positives. I can say, hey, maybe Isaiah's job is to be a road warrior, so him showing up in a different city every day, or maybe even 2 cities in one day, isn't something that's necessarily risky. I wouldn't want that to be high and block him from doing his job. But I can, so individual users, I can do different things. And then you can see over here is I can configure things like multi-factor authentication. I can assign policies, what's risky, what's not. So for example, on my risk policy, I can come over here and say, hey, apply it to everybody, individual groups. So again, I could just say the people that have access to important information like finance or HR, I can limit it just to them. I can say what's the sign-in risk. If they're high, block them. But I also could just say all my different options here. So really straightforward and simple. I could say I can allow access, but require you to have MFA or require you to change your password. And then what I can even do is before I turn it on is that I could, since the service has been running and it's tied to your 365 service or all your other services, so that I can actually run a what if report and say how many people would be impacted if I turned that on. So for example, if I came in here to sign-in risk and I changed that to medium, okay, and I apply that, now I can say is, all right, how many people would get impacted if I said block everybody at medium risk and above? And you'll see here is that 18 out of my 200 users would lose access to the service. So that would tell me as an admin that I either A, don't do that, or maybe investigate what are those 18 people doing that it's getting flagged as a medium risk event. And so you get the idea of some of the quick powers that this service is able to do. All right, and so let me switch back to my deck to kind of wrap up. All right, and so where's that? What is this? How's this all tie together? And so I put this picture in there for you guys to look at after the fact of how all the various services. These are all the services that are in EMS. So that Azure AD Premium that we talked about at the very beginning, Cloud App Security, that's the thing that's looking for the validity and risk events of various SaaS-based applications, encryption, advanced threat analytics, and Intune. Right, lots of stuff in that package for not very much money. And then I also put in this one slide in here that shows how the product is licensed and what you get at the two various licensing levels. Right, so E3 and E5. So you can look at that on your own. And then finally, I've written some articles that are basically written down versions, blog entry versions on some of what we've discussed today, but at a deeper level. So if you want to read some more, then you can click through or into your browser and read some quick reads on what's going on. And then wrapping it up, talking finally about who NewSignature is and how we can help you. So NewSignature is a Microsoft only consulting company. Focus exclusively on all these cloud-based services. Also do the traditional on-premises work as well. But what we can help you do is transform your business through the use of all these advanced services. We stay up to date. We're 100% Microsoft shop ourselves. So we're in Microsoft's language, eating our own dog food. So if anything new is coming out, we're at the forefront operating out of that. So we have our own methodology of plan, build, operate, and so we really strongly believe in planning is one of the most, if not the most important foundation to any deployment or use of these software. So really understand how you want to use it, how it impacts your business and your requirements, help you build it or enable it, and then we can actually help you operate it as well in that. We're a managed services company as well, so that if you don't want to have the day-to-day drudgery of operating this or working with Microsoft on any incidents that might come up, then we'll actually do that for you or hand in hand with you. We can act as a second or third tier help desk even for you. And so, so these are kind of our three pillars that I described. So traditional professional services, so normal consulting, right, coming and helping you do the work, whether it's infrastructure type work, cloud-based work, custom development, SharePoint, normal, all that sort of thing, the managed services that I described already, as well as even cloud-based applications of our own where we have like the cloud management portal, so to help you understand hey, where's all my money going in Azure? Who's spending the most in my company? How can I better track which applications, which servers are consuming the most, and help me optimize my my usage of Azure? And that kind of wraps it up for me today. again, if you want to contact us, that's our email address. And any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. That was great information, great presentation as well. Again, just a reminder to everybody on the call that the recording will be sent to you within 2 to 3 business days. So you can have all the links to Dave's blogs, and you can have the information to contact us with questions. But in the meantime, did we have any questions that we can answer? We have about 10 to 13 minutes if anybody had anything now. Looks like there's no questions at the moment, so I guess we can wrap up early and give you 12 minutes of your afternoon back. Dave, thank you so much, and have a great afternoon, everyone.